Let's open up one of the most important foundational chapters in this whole course. Because before you can govern AI, you have to truly understand what it is. Think of it this way: how can you set rules for something you don't fully grasp? You can't, not well anyway. So here's what we'll explore together. First, we'll answer the basic but crucial question: what actually is artificial intelligence? And what makes these systems different from ordinary software? Then we'll untangle some terms that get thrown around interchangeably but really aren't, things like AI, machine learning, and deep learning. We'll also tour the different types of AI systems you'll encounter, from older rule-based systems all the way to the generative AI and agentic systems making headlines today. And then we get to the heart of why this course exists at all: the risks. We'll look at how AI can create problems for individuals, for groups, for organizations, and for society as a whole. Because here's the thing: governance isn't about fearing technology, it's about understanding where it can go wrong so we can use it wisely. So, as we move through this chapter, keep one question in mind: why would this need oversight? That curiosity will make everything click. Let's dive in. So, let's start right at the beginning. What actually is artificial intelligence? You hear the term everywhere, but let's pin down what it really means. Here's a working idea: AI refers to systems that can perform tasks we'd normally associate with human intelligence. Things like recognizing patterns, making decisions, understanding language, or learning from experience. Now, let me break that down in simpler words because the formal definitions can feel slippery. Ordinary software follows exact instructions a human wrote, step by step. AI is different. It can figure things out from data rather than being told every single rule. Think about how you learned to recognize a cat. Nobody gave you a precise list of cat features. You just saw many cats and your brain learned the pattern. A lot of modern AI works in a strikingly similar way. Here's a real example. When your email filters spam, no programmer wrote a rule for every possible junk message. Instead, the system learned from millions of examples what spam tends to look like. That learning ability is the heart of what makes something AI. So, why does this matter for governance? Because a system that learns and makes its own decisions behaves less predictably than traditional software. And anything that's powerful yet less predictable is exactly the kind of thing that needs thoughtful oversight. Keep that idea in your pocket. It's the thread running through this entire course. Now that we know roughly what AI is, let's look at the specific traits that make these systems distinctive. Because these characteristics are exactly why governance becomes necessary. Let me walk you through them as a set of qualities rather than a dry list. First, AI systems learn from data. They improve and adapt based on the examples they're fed rather than relying solely on fixed instructions. Second, they're often probabilistic, meaning they deal in likelihoods rather than certainties. Ask the same system twice and you might get slightly different answers. Third, many operate with a degree of autonomy, making decisions or taking actions without a human approving every step. And fourth, they can operate at enormous speed and scale, handling volumes no human team ever could. Now let me make this real. Imagine a system that reviews loan applications. It learned from past data, it estimates the probability someone will repay, it can decide automatically, and it can process thousands of applications an hour. Sounds efficient, right? But pause and ask yourself, what happens if the data it learned from was biased? Suddenly, that speed and autonomy multiply the problem across thousands of people instantly. Do you see why these traits matter so much? Each helpful characteristic carries a flip side of risk. That's precisely the tension governance exists to manage, capturing the benefits of these qualities while keeping their dangers in check. Let's clear up a distinction that causes a lot of confusion, especially thanks to movies: the difference between narrow AI and general AI. Picture the AI you see in films: robots that think, feel, and reason about anything, just like a human. That's the idea of general AI, a system with broad, human level intelligence that can handle any task you throw at it. Now, here's the reality check: That kind of AI doesn't exist today. Not the customer service bot, not the image generator, none of it. Everything we actually use is narrow AI. So, what's narrow AI? It's AI designed to do one specific thing or a narrow range of things very well. Think of a chess program. It might crush a grandmaster, but ask it to recommend a movie and it's helpless. It's brilliant within its narrow lane and useless outside it. Here's a real example to anchor this. A system that detects tumors in scans might outperform doctors at that single task. Yet, it has no idea what a tumor even means in a broader sense. It just recognizes patterns it was trained on. Why does this distinction matter for governance? Because it keeps our expectations and our concerns grounded in reality. We're not governing all-knowing machines. We're governing narrow tools that are powerful precisely because they are focused. Understanding this helps you cut through hype and focus on the real risks of the AI we genuinely have, not the science fiction version. Let's untangle three terms that get tossed around as if they mean the same thing: AI, machine learning, and deep learning. They're related, but they're not interchangeable, and getting this right will make you sound far sharper in any governance conversation. Here's the simplest way I know to picture it. Imagine three circles nested inside one another, like a set of bowls. The biggest bowl is artificial intelligence, the broad idea of machines doing intelligent things. Inside that sits a smaller bowl, machine learning, which is one particular approach to AI where systems learn patterns from data rather than being explicitly programmed. And inside that sits an even smaller bowl, deep learning, a specialized type of machine learning that uses layered structures loosely inspired by the brain to handle very complex patterns. So every deep learning system is machine learning, and every machine learning system is AI, but not the other way around. Let me make it concrete. An old-fashioned rule-based system is AI, but not machine learning. A spam filter that learns from examples is machine learning. And the technology behind recognizing faces in photos or generating realistic text, that's typically deep learning. Why care about these layers for governance? Because the deeper you go, the harder these systems become to explain and predict. And as you'll see throughout this course, explainability is a huge governance concern. So keep these nested bowls in mind. They'll come up again and again. Let's look at one of the oldest forms of AI, rule-based and expert systems, because understanding them helps you appreciate just how different modern AI really is. So what are they? Think of a rule-based system as a giant set of if this, then that instructions written by humans. If a patient has these symptoms, then suggest this diagnosis. Expert systems are a classic example. They tried to capture the knowledge of a human expert as a long list of explicit rules. Here's a familiar comparison. Think about an old tax filing program that asks you questions and based on your answers follows fixed rules to fill in forms. There's no learning happening, just rules a human carefully coded in advance. Now here's something interesting for governance. These systems have one big advantage. They're transparent. If the system makes a decision, you can trace exactly which rules led to it, like following a recipe. Compare that to a modern deep learning system where the reasoning can be almost impossible to unpack. So why don't we just use rule-based systems everywhere? Because the real world is messy. Writing rules for every possible situation quickly becomes impossible, which is exactly why learning-based AI took over. But here's the governance lesson worth keeping. As we traded rigid rules for flexible learning, we gained power but lost transparency. That trade-off, capability versus explainability, is a tension you'll see echoed throughout this entire field. Let's dig deeper into machine learning systems specifically, since this is the engine behind most of the AI you encounter today. We touched on the idea earlier, but let's really understand how it works and why it matters. Here's the core concept. Instead of a human writing every rule, a machine learning system is shown lots of examples and figures out the patterns on its own. Think of how a child learns to tell dogs from cats. You don't recite a definition, you just point at animals and say dog or cat until the child catches on. Machine learning does something remarkably similar, learning from labeled examples until it can handle new ones it's never seen. Let me give you a real scenario. A bank wants to spot fraudulent transactions. Rather than coding rules for every fraud trick, they feed the system thousands of past transactions marked fraud or not fraud. The system learns the subtle patterns and starts flagging suspicious activity on its own. Powerful, right? But now think like a governance professional. What if those past examples reflected some hidden bias? The system would faithfully learn that bias too, then apply it at scale. This is the crucial insight. Machine learning is only as good as the data it learns from. Garbage in, garbage out, as the saying goes. So, whenever you meet a machine learning system, your instinct should be to ask, what did this learn from, and can we trust that source? That question sits at the heart of responsible AI. Now, let's talk about the technology that's captured the world's attention: generative AI and large language models. You've almost certainly used one, so let's understand what's really going on under the hood. Here's the basic idea. Most AI we discussed so far makes decisions or predictions. Is this spam? Is this fraud? Generative AI does something different. It creates new content: text, images, code, even music. Large language models, the kind behind popular chat tools, are trained on enormous amounts of text and learn to predict what word should come next, which lets them produce remarkably human-like writing. Let me put it plainly. Imagine someone who read a huge slice of the internet and got incredibly good at guessing the next word in any sentence. String enough of those guesses together skillfully and you get fluent paragraphs, answers, and essays. That's roughly what's happening. Now here's where the governance alarm bells ring. These systems can sound confident while being completely wrong, a phenomenon often called hallucination. They can also reproduce biases or sensitive information from their training data. Picture a company using one of these to draft customer responses, and it confidently states a false policy. Who's responsible for that mistake? See the problem? Generative AI is astonishingly useful, but its fluency can mask serious risks. So throughout this course, treat generative AI with both appreciation and healthy caution. Its power and its pitfalls are exactly why thoughtful governance matters so much here. Let's explore two major areas where AI shines: computer vision and natural language processing, because you interact with both far more than you might realize. Let's take them one at a time. Computer vision is, simply put, teaching machines to understand images and video, to see in a meaningful way. When your phone unlocks by recognizing your face, or a car spots a pedestrian, that's computer vision at work. The system learned from countless images what faces or pedestrians look like. Natural language processing, often shortened to NLP, is the flip side. It's about teaching machines to understand and work with human language. Every time a voice assistant understands your request, or a tool translates a sentence, or your email suggests a reply, NLP is involved. So why group these together for a governance discussion? Because both deal with deeply human, deeply sensitive things: our faces and our words. Think about it. A facial recognition system that misidentifies someone could lead to a wrongful accusation. A language system that misreads tone could mishandle a vulnerable person reaching out for help. Do you see the stakes? These aren't abstract risks. They touch identity, privacy, and fairness directly. Here's the instructor takeaway. The more an AI system touches something personal, like your face or your voice, the higher the governance bar should be. So as we go on, watch for these technologies. They sit right at the intersection of capability and human impact. Now let's look at something newer and genuinely important for the updated exam: agentic AI systems. This is cutting-edge territory, so let's make sure you really get it. Here's the key shift. Most AI we've discussed responds to a request. You ask, it answers. Agentic AI goes further. It can take actions on its own to accomplish a goal, often across multiple steps with limited human involvement at each step. Think of the difference between a calculator and a personal assistant. A calculator answers when you press buttons. An assistant, given a goal like book my trip, goes off and handles the flights, the hotel, the calendar, making its own decisions along the way. That's the agentic idea. AI that doesn't just inform, but acts. Exciting, right? But now, put on your governance hat. What happens when a system can take real actions without a human checking each one? Imagine an agentic system managing purchases that misunderstands a goal and orders the wrong things repeatedly before anyone notices. The autonomy that makes it useful also makes it riskier. This is why agentic AI raises such serious governance questions. We have to think about guardrails, oversight, and the ability to step in and stop it. So here's what I want you to remember. As AI shifts from advising to acting, governance becomes not just important but essential. The more independent the system, the more carefully we must define what it's allowed to do and what it absolutely is not. Now we arrive at the part of this chapter that explains why governance truly matters: the risks. And we'll start at the most personal level: the risks to individuals like you and me. Let me walk you through three big ones. First, privacy. AI systems often feed on personal data, sometimes far more than people realize. Think of a system that builds a detailed profile of you from your browsing, purchases, and location. Did you ever truly agree to that? That's a privacy risk. Second, autonomy, which is about your freedom to make your own choices. When an AI subtly nudges what news you see or what products appear, it can quietly shape your decisions without you noticing. Picture a feed designed to keep you scrolling, slowly steering your attention. That's your autonomy being chipped away. And third, discrimination. This one's serious. If an AI system treats people unfairly based on characteristics like race, gender, or age, real individuals get harmed. Imagine being denied a loan or a job by an algorithm with no clear reason and no one to ask. Frustrating and unjust, isn't it? Here's why I want you to feel these risks, not just memorize them. Behind every governance rule is a real person who could be hurt if we get it wrong. When you study fairness or privacy requirements later, picture that individual. Governance isn't bureaucracy, it's protection. Keeping real people in mind will make you both a better exam candidate and a better professional. Let's zoom out now from the individual to the group level. Because AI risks don't just affect single people, they can harm entire communities at once. This is where bias and exclusion become especially troubling. Let me explain the difference from individual harm. When an AI system carries a bias, it doesn't usually pick on one random person. It tends to disadvantage a whole group sharing some characteristic. Think about a hiring tool trained mostly on resumes from one demographic. It might quietly learn to favor that group and screen out others, not once, but every single time it runs. Do you see how that scales harm across a whole community? Then there's exclusion, which is subtler but just as damaging. Imagine a voice recognition system that struggles with certain accents, or a medical AI trained mainly on one population. People outside that group get worse service or get left out entirely, often without anyone intending it. Here's a real example that stuck with me. Some early facial recognition systems worked far less accurately for certain skin tones, simply because the training data underrepresented those groups. The result? Whole communities facing higher error rates. So why does this matter for governance? Because group harm is easy to miss when you only test on the average user. The instructor lesson here is vital. Always ask, who might this system fail and which communities aren't represented in the data? Protecting groups requires deliberately looking for the people a system might quietly leave behind. Let's shift perspective now to the organizations deploying AI, because they face very real risks too, and understanding these helps you speak the language of business leaders. Let me walk you through three big ones. First, liability. When an AI system causes harm, someone may be held legally responsible. And increasingly, that's the organization that built or used it. Imagine a company whose AI tool wrongly denies people insurance, and now they're facing lawsuits. That's liability staring them in the face. Second, reputation. This one moves fast and cuts deep. Picture a business whose chatbot says something offensive, and within hours, it's all over social media. Trust that took years to build can evaporate overnight. Customers, partners, and investors all watch how a company handles AI. Third, compliance. With new laws like the EU AI Act arriving, organizations must follow specific rules or face serious penalties. Think of the scramble when a company realizes its AI system doesn't meet a regulation that just took effect. Here's why I'm framing it this way. As a governance professional, you'll often need to convince leadership to invest in doing AI responsibly. And here's the honest truth. It's the right thing to do matters, but pairing it with it protects us from lawsuits, scandal, and fines gets attention in the boardroom. So learn to see AI risk through the organization's eyes too. When you can connect good governance to protecting the business, you become far more persuasive and far more valuable. Finally, let's widen the lens all the way out to society as a whole, because some AI risks are big enough to affect entire populations, even democracies. Let me walk you through three that keep experts up at night. First, misinformation. Generative AI can now produce convincing fake text, images, and videos at massive scale. Imagine fabricated content spreading during an election or a fake video of a leader saying something they never said. When people can no longer tell what's real, trust in everything erodes. That's a societal level danger. Second, inequality. If the benefits of AI flow mainly to those who already have resources, while its harms fall on those who don't, existing gaps can widen. Picture powerful AI tools available only to wealthy companies or nations, leaving others further behind. Third, security. AI can be turned toward harmful ends, from sophisticated cyber attacks to surveillance that threatens basic freedoms. Think of AI used to monitor entire populations or to launch attacks faster than humans can defend against. Why end the chapter here at this grand scale? Because I want you to grasp the full range of what's at stake. Governance isn't only about protecting one person's privacy, though it is that. It's also about safeguarding truth, fairness, and security for everyone. So as you move forward, hold all four levels together: individual, group, organization, and society. That complete picture is exactly why this field exists and why your role in it genuinely matters.